Hello students, and welcome to our soft field approach and landing execution video. Before we jump into the cockpit, let's quickly discuss the objective of this maneuver and some key factors that we'll be focusing on. The objective of a soft field approach and landing is to safely land the aircraft on a soft surface, such as dirt, grass, or anything else that is not hard pavement. In this maneuver execution video, we will not be covering detailed aerodynamics, maneuver diagrams, common student errors, or the ACS standards. This video is to simply explain and demonstrate the execution of the maneuver, and it will vary based on the aircraft that you are actually training in. To see all of the details we just mentioned above and to study this lesson's full-length presentation, podcast, diagrams, flashcards, lesson quiz, and more, look up the soft field approach and landing lesson on our website at wificfi.com. Lastly, before we get into the cockpit, there are a couple key factors that we need to cover regarding this maneuver. First is our emphasis on a stabilized approach. Now, if you've seen any of our other landing videos, you know how much emphasis we place on having a stabilized approach. What that is, the exact definition is this. A stabilized approach is one in which the pilot establishes and maintains a constant angle glide path towards a predetermined point on the landing runway. So we pick a predetermined point on the landing runway. We're going to have a constant angle glide path. So we're not going to be pitching up or down or banking hard left and right, anything like that. We're going to have a pretty constant power setting. Nice. The airplane's going to be nice and trimmed out, and everything's going to be super stable as we're coming in on approach. That just makes the landing sequence so much easier and so much smoother. So we cannot emphasize that enough. A stabilized approach is key in any landing. Also, we'll talk about the before landing checklist in this video. We're going to begin the video on the downwind leg at our traffic pattern altitude, and we'll be at about 90 to 100 knots. Once we're abeam our landing point on the downwind leg, we're going to go ahead and reduce our power, extend our flaps, and begin a nice stabilized descent at 80 knots. We'll then go ahead and make our turn onto the base leg at an appropriate time, which we'll show you in the video. We're going to increase our flaps to 20 degrees and continue the stabilized descent at 70. Lastly, we're going to turn base to final, align our airplane with the center line of the runway, increase our flaps to 30 degrees, and our final approach speed is going to be 65 to 70 knots. Now, this is where the soft field landing differs from a short field landing or a normal landing. Okay, so we're on final. Upon crossing the threshold of the runway, what we're going to do is we're smoothly going to reduce our throttle to idle, and we're going to complete the round out flare and touchdown. But since we're going to be landing on a soft surface, we need to make sure that we touch down on the main landing gear, and then we do it very softly without any side drift or side loading of the landing gear. Okay, you want to touch down very soft because you might be landing on, soft dirt or grass, and you don't want your landing gear to sink in. So it's very key that we touch down soft and we touch down on the main landing gear first. After we touch down, we are not going to reduce our flaps. Okay, we're not going to retract our flaps. We're going to leave them in because we want more weight on the wings than we want on the wheels. Again, because we don't want our wheels to sink into the soft surface. So we're going to touch down nice and smooth on the main landing gear, leave the flaps in, and we're going to keep back pressure on the yoke. Now, not enough to take back off again, but we're going to hold some back pressure on our flight controls to the point where the nose wheel will just gently come down and touch onto the surface as the airplane's airspeed is depleted. So as the airspeed starts to continually depletes, the nose wheel will gently just fall and touch onto the soft surface again, very gently. Okay, so I think that's everything. Let's go ahead and hop in the cockpit, and we will get out there and execute this maneuver and show you guys how it's done. All right, so here we are out at our airplane, about ready to do our soft field approach and landing. Before we do that, just kind of want to show you guys where we're at in the process, how we've got the airplane set up, and then we'll go ahead and continue. So as we stated before, we're going to start on the downwind leg. If we go ahead and look over here, we are parallel to the downwind leg, or sorry, we are on the downwind leg, parallel to the runway out there on the left. We are on a left downwind for that runway, so that's where we're going to come around and make our soft field approach and landing. Now, this isn't really a soft field, we're just simulating that it's a soft field. Okay, this is actually hard pavement But on your test or in real life, when you're landing on something soft, you're going to want to use these techniques. Let's go ahead and hop in the cockpit, show you where we're at. So we've got our downwind heading bugged on our heading indicator. We have our traffic pattern altitude bugged of the 1,000 feet, and we are at 90 knots for our speed. So everything's looking good. The other thing that you would have done at this point is the before landing checklist. So that's going to vary based on which aircraft that you're flying, but you would have gotten out your before landing checklist. You would have adjusted your speed, your cowl flaps, your mixture, gotten your ATIS, your AWOS, made sure your lights were on and your seatbelts were on. All of those different kinds of things are on the before landing checklist. So we're going to assume we're already done there, and we are going to continue on our downwind here until we get about a beam our landing point, where we'll bring our power back and continue on with the soft field approach and landing. The other thing I do want to show you is that while we are doing this here, this is the view that we're going to use to look out the left window and see where we're at in the process of the traffic pattern. So that's it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and knock out our soft field approach and landing. I'm going to go ahead and unpause it here, kick off the autopilot, and we'll just fly. Okay, so continuing on our downwind traffic pattern altitude, downwind heading, airspeed looks good. We'll kind of keep looking. We can probably go a little bit further before we start putting our flaps in and beginning our descent. Just kind of checking out the window, looking at our runway here. And that's looking pretty good, close to the end. So we're going to go ahead and bring our power back a little bit. We're going to extend a notch of flaps. And we're going to trim for a nice easy descent at about 80. Nothing too crazy, just a nice gentle descent. And we're going to keep an eye on where our runway is. Everything's looking nice and stable here. Runway's looking good. It's probably about a good point. Let's go ahead and make our left turn onto our base leg. Once we get onto our base leg, we're going to add another notch of flaps, and we'll be slowing to about 70 to 75. We'll come out wings level here. Let's go ahead and extend our next notch of flaps. Kind of check on where we're at. Check on where we're at with our runway here. Sweet, looking pretty good. It is kind of hard to judge this final turn here on the sim, so I'm going to turn. If it ends up being a little bit early, that's kind of easier to deal with than being too late. So I'm just going to go ahead and start my turn now. And it looks like we were a little bit early, but that is okay. No worries there. We can go ahead and bring it out. Okay, coming out on final here. Let's go ahead and extend our last notch of flaps. And we are going to be looking for about 65 to 70 on our airspeed as we come in for our landing. Wow. So while we're on final, again, can't emphasize enough the stabilized approach. So we're looking at our airspeed, our constant angle glide path, and that we are on center line. So I'm going to creep to the left just a little bit to get on center line. And then you can basically just keep saying to yourself, okay, airspeed, center line, glide path, or airspeed, glide path, center line. That's how I like to say it. So airspeed, glide path, center line. Okay, everything's looking good. It's looking good. Everything's looking good. And we're just going to make nice, gentle changes as we come down here to our runway 27. As we come and cross the threshold, remember we're going to go ahead and reduce our throttle nice and smoothly to idle. And we're going to try to touch down as gently as we possibly can on that main landing gear. Once we do, we're just going to leave the flaps in, kind of hold back on the stick just a little bit, and let that nose come down very gently onto the center line of the runway. Okay, so we didn't just let the nose plop down, we let it come down nice and gently as our airspeed depleted. Now I'm not using any brakes here at all, just because I don't want to sink my aircraft down onto the runway if it was, you know, a soft surface. You could even add a little bit of power right now if you felt like you needed to, but we're just kind of rolling out using the rudder pedals to stay here on our center line. Not trying to make any sharp turns or anything to get off the runway, just let the airplane slow down, and then we can add power as we need it to get off the runway. So that's it, guys, for our soft filled approach and landing. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next execution maneuver video coming up soon.